Presidential debate. A new Quinnipiac University poll shows that Kamala Harris's popularity is fading in key swing states, and Asheville, North Carolina is still reeling from the devastation caused by Hurricane Helene. We have those stories and so much more. Blaze News Tonight starts right now. Welcome to the chaos. I'm Jill Savage. Today is Wednesday, October 2nd. Last night, the vice presidential candidates Tim Walz and JD Vance faced off in their only debate. And you know what? JD Vance was out there putting on a clinic. Joining me now to break it all down is Matthew Peterson, editor-in-chief of Blaze Media, and Dinesh D'Souza, renowned author and filmmaker. So Dinesh, thanks so much for joining us. So let's start with the debate. What were your thoughts? What were your main takeaways from JD Vance last night?
Well, I got to say, as a Dartmouth graduate, he vindicated the value of an Ivy League education. He was informed, measured, cosmopolitan, likable, and I think he delivered. It's a very, very important moment for him because Trump is getting up there. And so I think in some ways, we, even if unconsciously, can't help thinking beyond Trump. And I think JD Vance proved last night that this is a guy with the intellectual ability and the emotional balance to sort of continue with the Trumpian spirit, if you will, beyond Trump. I think it also, in a way, was a vindication of Trump in a sense, because when Trump picked Pence the last time, people said, well, Trump is an alpha male. He doesn't like anybody else who will overshadow him. He doesn't like anyone else who's smart. He needs somebody who's very passive. But I think with Vance, you get somebody who has his own mind. It clearly is his own guy. And I think it speaks well of Trump that Trump not only went with Vance, but seems to genuinely like the guy.
Dinesh, do you think that this debate actually moves the dial in some way? Or how does it actually impact what's going on? Because, of course, in the past, we all know, I mean, even scholars will say this, vice presidential debates don't matter. It feels like something about this matters, maybe? What do you think?
I think what matters is that in a sense, this is a case where the vice presidential pick on both sides is sort of aimed at going after the same audience, namely the white working class vote, which is decisive in a lot of the key states. Apparently, the Democrats think that Walz is a populist on the left to counter JD Vance, the populist on the right. But I think that the problem with Walz, to some degree, there are elements of him that are charming and that have a certain folksy quality, but he's so over the top that, at least from my sensibility, he borders on the ridiculous. And there's an element of insincerity, fakery, putting it on. And Kamala's like that, too. So whereas JD and Trump are, whatever you think about them, they're both real authentic guys. JD is the way he is. Trump is a unique character, but Trump's not putting it on. Trump puts it on in the sense that he's a salesman. I mean, the burgers at Mar-a-Lago are the best burgers ever made and so on. So Trump has his shtick. But no one can deny that this guy is a unique individual.
I looked at censorship. That came up again last night. Tim Walz has talked about this previously before, right? He said, I don't run Facebook. But we know from a comment that he made back in 2022, he said there's no guarantee for free speech when it comes to misinformation. Now, you combine that with an apology from Mark Zuckerberg saying, I'm sorry that we worked with the White House in censoring so many Americans. What do you make of all of this?
He tried to get out of it, Tim Walz did, by invoking the sort of famous example of shouting fire in a crowded theater. But even though that's not really the the truth of it is that the stuff that they censor has nothing to do with shouting fire in a crowded theater. It has to do with people pushing back against the CDC. Rochelle Walensky saying that if you take the vaccine, you can't get COVID. You can't spread COVID. Or Fauci putting out what was clearly, he even now admits, a massive made-up idea that science requires 6 feet of social distancing. He's now said, no, we just kind of came up with that one. We just made it up. Well, they're censoring people who are fighting back against government-sponsored misinformation. And at no point did Walz even begin to defend that, even though that's something that the Biden-Harris regime continues to push.
All right, Dinesh, let's switch gears and take a look at your new film, Vindicating Trump.
We were able to purchase 10,000 ballots.
That's terrifying.
They cheat in many different ways. That's all they're good at.
Ready to save democracy?
We need to stop him permanently.
And that person will be risking his life.
Too bad it's not the 60s, right?
It's the way you survived.
I said, get me up.
Trump has beaten back every attack against him.
It's like the damn Terminator.
We're going to fix our borders, or we're going to fix our elections. We're going to win.
So, Dinesh, without spoiling it too much, how has Trump been vindicated here?
The film really makes the case for Trump. You know, there are even Republicans who say things like, well, I don't like the guy, but, you know, I like his policies. Or they'll say, he needs to shut his mouth. Or people, in some ways, are angling for they want to rehabilitate Trump. They want a new and different Trump. And my point to them is no. For this particular crisis that we're facing at this time in the country, this guy is actually tailor-made for the job. He may not be the perfect guy in any other time. He's the perfect guy for our time. So Trump doesn't make the case for himself in the way that, say, Reagan did. Here are 7 reasons to vote for me. So the film and a book of the same title make that case. And the website is vindicatingtrump.com. That's where you can get movie tickets.
Dinesh, I find it fascinating, the arc of your career and life and this stuff, having followed you for a long time, was reading you when you were, writing these incisive books, and now you've long since made a sort of transition into really affecting the popular imagination and mind and making serious arguments in other ways. I'm curious though about that trajectory, because it's interesting. It's obviously related, but very different. I mean, talk a little bit about that personally.
I moved into the films thinking that a film is nothing more than the sort of setting a book to music, but it's not really true. A book is an argument. It's kind of like a legal brief with references and so on. A film is needs to be a narrative, a story. And a film is an emotional medium. That's why it has music underneath it. The score is the emotional script, if you will, of the film. And I think a good documentary film has all the elements of a good feature film. It has character, it has plot, suspense, narrative, climax. So I try to put all of that in the film, and I make them for the theater. You can watch it later by streaming on your computer or even your phone, but to see it in the theater with other people who are like-minded, it's a very unique experience.
What impact do you hope that this film makes?
I think that the film can have the effect of firing up and illuminating the Trump base, but at the same time, it will be very eye-opening for people who are moderate, undecided. The reason being, it brings out a private aspect of Trump. I have a kind of one-on-one with Trump. Trump is not the same in private as he is in public. So, for example, he's famously egotistical in public. He wants compliments all around. He loves to take credit. Ironically, in private, he's whimsical, he's self-deprecating, he shows a lot of attention to other people, he meets a doorman in the lobby, he knows the name of the guy's kid. So those are not the characteristics of a narcissist. So by bringing this out in the film, I enable people to see another side of Trump and see Trump in a new light. It's one thing to tell people about it, it's another thing in the movie to show it.
All right, give us that website one more time where people can go get tickets.
Website's vindicatingtrump.com. You plug in your city or your town, all the theaters will pop up, and you can also pre-order the book of the same title.
Dinesh, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
When we come back, Blaze TV host Steve Deace will explain how JD Vance might have won the election for Trump. Don't go anywhere. with the massive tax hikes proposed by Kamala Harris, almost a 40% top income tax rate, 7% increase for the corporate tax, and a capital gains tax on unrealized gains, and the fact that she's proposing to add on almost $2 trillion to a current $2 trillion deficit. You might be thinking it's time to make more of your tax-sheltered savings and put them in an inflation shelter as well. And this is where you can trust the good people at Birch Gold Group to help you. Birch Gold will assist you in converting an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. And the best news is you won't pay a penny for it out of pocket. Just text the word Jill to 989898 and get a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation. It's just going to be information from fortifying your savings before the crazy really hits. With a A+ rating and the Better Business Bureau has thousands of happy customers, you can trust Birch Gold too. Text Jill to the number 989898 for your free info kit today. Did JD Vance win the election for Trump last night? BlazeTV host Steve Deace thinks so. And you know what? He joins us here in studio right now. And gentlemen, it's not that long ago that we were just sitting here before the debate last night. The two of you had a lot of advice for JD Vance. He followed a lot of that advice. So what do you make of his performance last night, Steve?
I think when you look at the numbers of viewers, it's indicative of, again, I mean, this is going to be one of the most watched vice presidential debates we've ever had. I think it's indicative of, again, that there's a lot of people out there still that are looking for an option other than the options before them. And we have had two driving impulses at the beginning of this cycle. A majority of the American people thought Joe Biden was too old to vote for, and a majority of the American people did not want to have to vote for Donald Trump again. And I think what Vance provided, and I go back to that Emerson poll that we talked about last night of Pennsylvania, where Trump was +7 over Kamala on the issues, but then even with her in the top line result. And that indicates, again, there's just a lot of normies who think they have this luxury of voting based on something other than policy. And I think that JD Vance last night provided a reasonable, accessible, engaging and relatable version of Trump's political brand that I think if that doesn't work, if that doesn't close the sale, then I just don't think it's possible that we could have won this cycle with Trump as a Trump version 3.0. I don't know how it could have gone better than what he did. And so, then when you throw in those numbers of people who viewed, if this doesn't close the sale and what was a razor close election going in, then I at this point don't know what it would take.
So one of the interesting things that you said, I think you said it really well just on the Twitters. Hey, I hope you write that for the website. Please do.
Tell the team there is a cut and paste function. They can do that. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Was something along the lines of this was the best case for Trump that bridged the gap and explained what he stood for to people who are made uncomfortable by him or don't like him, many of whom are already right-leaning or independently minded. And I would just say, I mean, that was made manifest to me by, anecdotal examples, but I do, in fact, have friends and know people who do not like Donald Trump whatsoever and refuse to vote for him. And many of those people were moved in exactly the way that you described this morning. They said he was able to articulate, and that's very important to me, what Trump stands for. I see that. And I don't know how many of those people there are, but it certainly seems like he was successful in doing that. And am I right in saying your case is, well, however many, or maybe how many there are, this matters a lot right now because we are dealing with slivers, as you said.
I absolutely think because there's not a lot of people and we are dealing with slivers that it does matter a lot. And, Trump rose to prominence on we're going to build a wall, ultimately. And it's a wall we need to build, by the way. What JD did last night was build a bridge. Right? He used characteristics that Trump has often struggled to model himself. And then, of course, the media's perception of him is just, beyond gross. So driving a lot of that as well. Trump has been unable throughout the entirety of his political ascendancy to connect the dot between my disruption is what is needed for your normalcy. Okay? The people that you think are normal are the ones that walked into my office and told me we had to shut the government down and end the greatest economy of all time, and who knows when it'll ever open again. That's not normal. My disruption is actually what brings you normalcy. He has struggled to connect that dot in how he messages himself as a candidate. JD provided that last link in the fence last night. He used the way that he communicated, the style by which, the presence that he had, those characteristics, I think, built a bridge to give those voters permission to say, you know what, it's Reagan once famously coined this line about Barry Goldwater, who in some respects probably Trump is more like than a lot of people think because of the pugilistic persona. In your heart, you know he's right, is what Reagan said about Goldwater, okay? And JD said that last night without saying it, okay? All right, fine. Okay, let's just strip all that away. How about if I present to you Trump's agenda in the fashion that you want it to be communicated to you? In the end, will we agree then, in your heart, you know he's right? And again, if that doesn't do it, then I just don't think we could have possibly done it this cycle. That's how good I thought it was.
Now, JD Vance is a very skilled politician, and he can build bridges with a lot of people, but MSNBC is still a bridge too far. Let's take a listen to what they had to say about JD Vance and his performance last night.
Like muting powers. And I actually think if you're a woman, that might be the worst moment JD Vance had, because he was going to mansplain right over that mute button. He was, and again, I don't pretend to know how everyone will react to this. I think that a lot of women in positions of authority that should command respect just by virtue of that dynamic will see themselves in some dude that disrespected them and talked over. I mean, there was a moment like that with the vice presidential in the Harris-Pence debate.
There's some woman out there. She's going to see that dude is just going to talk right over her. This is the stellar post-debate analysis that you get there on MSNBC, Steve.
I am not sure about a lot in this election. One thing I am sure of is that you can mansplain Tim Walz. I am sure you can mansplain to Tim Walz. I am positive of that. By the way, Nicole Wallace, for people that don't know, she had a prominent position in the Bush administration. My literary agent, Frank Breeden at Premier Authors, she had the cubicle right next to her in the Bush White House. So that just goes to show you again, and I say this to people that I am normally aligned with, but this idea that this was just some great paragon, this party was some great paragon of conservatism, it was proud of the legacy of Reagan, and it just could not continue. It just couldn't wait, Matt, to continue that for another generation until this, orange ne'er-do-well came down an escalator and just blew the whole thing up. It's just not true. It's not. Nicole Wallace was the Republican Party. Between Reagan and Trump, Nicole Wallace was the Republican Party. Okay. And the reason why people turned to this New York socialite that came down the escalator that one day is because they realized that. Yeah. Okay. And until whatever sliver is left of the ideological right that is still out there clutching pearls, until you offer the American people something that gets them more results than what Trump has, even with some of his topsy-turvy unsettledness that at times makes me unsettled, that's the best option people are going to have.
And I'm sorry, it's the tropes that she's using there. It's not even that her brand of conservatism, which was fake to begin with, is done and over with, and people realized it. It's also, now she's clutching for the culture knows, and we all know that men mansplain, and that's bad, and they're misogynists and whatever. That's also, I think, over. I declare agree. Over. You watch this now, and everyone looks at it and goes, please, for the love of God and everything holy, let's be gone, demons. We're done with this, right? and I think even normal people in between who aren't even necessarily right leaning, everyone is done with that. It's so fake. It's so tired. And he fact checked a fact checker. That's what most people saw, and they said, yes, we like that. And then your other point, which I think is really important tonight, is so weird how everyone keeps saying Republicans should do no more debates with the mainstream media, which I kind of agree with. No more debates with the quote-unquote mainstream media. No debates with people who hate you. I think that's right. But on the other hand, it's still worth it for them to do it because they've been demonized so badly and so insanely, right, as JD Vance had.
If they can do what JD Vance did.
Right.
Now, the list of them, Matt, that can do that, okay? And Trump has many gifts.
Right.
All right. He has made more money than you and I could count numbers, okay? But staying away from rakes and not walking into the pitfalls that these moderators lay for him is not one of the many gifts that he has displayed. So in his case, it might be best for him to stay away. But if you can do what JD did, then by all means, especially if they build you up into this incredible whack job, and then you go out there and you're really just a smart, reasonable person, it really discredits them holistically.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether we disagree on it or not. I would be fine with Trump doing another debate. I want him to do another debate.
I'm not fine with him doing it now. At this point, that if I were Trump, that's the last word.
Yeah, I get the wisdom of it. I still would like to see him do it. I think he'd be fine. But I also think when you talk about JD, as soon as they said he was weird and they tried to do that to them, I was happy because I knew this would happen. As long as people can see him, that's not going to work. And it's gone. It's done.
The live debate format with him going straight to the people, get what you get. You can actually see him for who he is. Steve, thanks so much for joining us today.
Always fun. Good to see you guys.
There's a new poll that shows that voters might be suffering from a Kamala hangover. Chris Bedford will break it all down next. We have less than 5 weeks until Election Day, but you don't have to wait until then to make your vote count. You can vote every single day with the choices you make. And when you choose GoodRanchers.com, you're choosing more than just delicious American meat. You're choosing to support local farms and ranches in the United States and stand up for transparency and safety in our food supply. Good Ranchers partners exclusively with American farms to provide you the pasture-raised beef, chicken, pork, wild-caught seafood that you can trust. Support local ranchers and ensure that you receive high-quality American-raised meat with no antibiotics, hormones, or seed oils ever. By shopping from GoodRanchers.com, you're making a statement about the kind of values that you stand for: quality, hard work, and dedication to the American tradition. And right now, Good Ranchers is running their presidential promo. So for a limited time, you can get a free add-on for a whole 4 years until the next presidential election. And that means that when you subscribe to any of their boxes, you can decide if you want any of that chicken breast, ground beef, smoked bacon, or wild-caught salmon in your box for every 4 years. It's the perfect way to ensure that you have high-quality American-raised meat in your kitchen. Plus, Good Ranchers makes it easy because every cut is perfectly portioned, vacuum sealed, and freezer ready. So you spend less time prepping and more time enjoying without the waste or hassle. And every time with every dollar right now, it matters because Good Ranchers gives you more value without compromising on quality. So don't miss out. Use my code Gietl to claim this presidential promo worth up to $1,200 and bring 100% American-raised meat to your families through 2028. It's GoodRanchers.com, code Gietl. GoodRanchers.com, American meat delivered. A recent Quinnipiac University poll puts Donald Trump ahead of Kamala Harris in Georgia, while North Carolina is still too close to call. But combined, these states carry 32 electoral votes. Here to discuss is Blaze senior politics editor and the Washington correspondent for us, Chris Bedford. So, Chris, let's dive into this poll. How significant is this latest data that we've just gotten?
What stands out to me most about this data is how it puts Kamala Harris basically exactly where Joe Biden was when Democrats had their complete panic. Now, that's not true across the board. At that time, you had Joe Biden potentially losing New Jersey. Pennsylvania was going to be a cinch. But those first couple weeks and months, they seemed almost like years if you were a conservative watching this whole thing, where JD Vance was weird and Kamala was cool and she was another step in the rainbow arc of history, and Tim Walz was just a military veteran and a hero and America's dad. All of that has since come crashing down. That's like really one of the big takeaways from the VP debate in October, when everyone in the country who is going to pay attention, everyone is going to pay attention, is paying attention. You look at Georgia, you start to look at North Carolina, and you see these spreads that say she's in trouble. And Democrats, are looking at this too. These are states where polling over the last two presidential elections versus Donald Trump has basically been placing Republicans 6 points behind where they actually end up. At least that spread closes by about 5 or 6 points. So when you see this now reflected in the polling, Granted, it's finally become cool to like Donald Trump. The moral stigma's gone. Democrats do start to worry and say this election may actually end up as disastrous as the Biden election could have been.
Chris, North Carolina. Do North Carolina in two ways for us. One, just talk about North Carolina in the next few weeks without the hurricane. Abstract, do you think Trump has a chance there? And then add in Hurricane Helene and the aftermath. How is that going to play out?
Well, I think that's going to depend a lot on the infrastructure. But I mean, right now, you've got a couple weeks before the election. Right now, you're starting to see these strange reports about the humidity and the rain certainly impacting the ability to mail in ballots. That's become a problem. But right now, also, you're seeing a lot of the sorting. You and I were talking about this a little bit before the show, where you have illegal immigrants getting $750 a day in New York to be able to stay in hotel rooms. But there's potentially offered $750 total stipend to help people get baby formula, to help people get groceries, to help people get water. That's the sort of thing that's really going to impact the federal government. It kind of reminds me of that Kanye West quote back in the day with Hurricane Katrina, an incredibly deadly hurricane by modern standards, which might actually be eclipsed when you end up going through these mudslides. Kanye West, maybe in an early sign of mental illness, went out there and said, George Bush doesn't care about black people. Well, this administration, whether you're in Ohio, a town that got blown off the map by a train, or whether you're in Appalachia, really needs to show that it cares about white people. And there's so many different signs and going-ons coming down. This one, of course, is just an act of God. This is nature. But if you're the Longshoremen Union, or if you're Israel, or you're Iran, you know that right now, the President of the United States is essentially incapacitated. He's not going to do anything to stop you. You know that Kamala Harris's only interest is in winning. She doesn't know policy. Poor Tim Walz up there last night. First question was talking about Kamala Harris's serious policy toward Israel and Iran. Well, that's an impossible question for Tim Walz. She has no policy, and if she had one, she certainly hasn't told him. So we had to totally make that up. But these countries, these unions are taking advantage of this chaos and this lack of leadership right now, knowing that by this White House. And maybe they'll reel it back after the election if Donald Trump wins. This is the time. And I thought there might be chaos. The war might expand to Lebanon. You might start to get some of the union pushback that you're getting right now. But I didn't expect all of these things, including this awful storm, to hit at once. More bad news for Democrats.
Well, you mentioned Tim Walz on stage. You wrote in your Beltway brief that he clearly lost the debate. I would ask you some of the best moments, but really I think they'd probably be more like worst moments that you picked up on.
Oh, my favorite. And I think I'm going to use this in any arguments I ever have with my wife. If I come home and she said, why did you lie about being at China on this certain day? I'm going to say, well, I grew up in a small town.
Riding my bikes.
Say, well, were you out drinking with your friends? And I'll say, well, when we were kids, we rode bicycles together. And I'm a knucklehead. I came from the middle class. My mom worked hard. I don't think these are answers that would suffice in any other moment. You've got Tim Walz's idea. We talked about this last night. He had to create a viral moment, a "you're no Jack Kennedy" moment. He didn't. I guess the only real viral moments he created were wide-eyed, like a deer in the headlights with JD Vance smirking. He created some viral moments where he went off on these ridiculous tangents to explain why he had politically calculated lies. And by the way, he did all this stuff. Well, Vance didn't even attack him. This was smart. Vance leaked to the media. We didn't report this because we couldn't confirm it. But his guys leaked all throughout the media that they were going to be attacking Tim Walz. His record was going to be on trial. Well, he didn't do that not once. And that's what Walz was prepared for. Instead, he was friendly as can be with Walz. He knew that the voters in Pennsylvania don't really care about some of the things in Walz's record. He's not going to win Minnesota anyways. Instead, he went after Kamala Harris, and that was a winning debate.
All right, Chris. Well, in wrapping up here, I guess what you're telling us, is this right? Is it fair to say that the joy of Kamala Harris is gone?
The vibes are starting to struggle. I think that they might need to take another hit off of that joint. The buzz is fading.
Chris Bedford, thanks so much for joining us, and always with the exquisite Tim Walz commentary. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
We will, absolutely. We'll see some more exclusive footage from the recovery efforts in Asheville, North Carolina, when we come back. The future of the Supreme Court is on the ballot, and these radical leftists want to eliminate the court's conservative majority by packing this court with their own hand-picked justices to get the outcomes that they want. But their end game is really court packing. At First Liberty, they call this assault on the court what it really is, a Supreme Court coup. The frightening thing is that come January, their plan could become our nation's reality. And that's why they're sounding the alarm, and they need you to join them. If we take action together, if we unite our voices, we can put a stop to the radical left's plan to take over the Supreme Court. As the 2024 election approaches, we need to do three things. First of all, find out where each of your candidates stand on the radical issues of packing and purging the court. Second, share what you learn with everyone you know. And third of all, do your civic duty and vote. The future of the court, preserving it as an independent judiciary, is in our hands. If we lose the court, we lose the country. And that's why First Liberty is taking action. And they need all of us to join them. With patriots like you standing for the Supreme Court, we can safeguard the independence of the judiciary just as the founding fathers intended. And by saying no to the Supreme Court coup, we can secure the blessings of liberty and protect the future of our constitutional rights for our children and grandchildren. Go to supremecoup.com/Jill. That's supremecoup.com/Jill to learn how you can help stop the radical left's takeover of the Supreme Court. You might have heard of Hurricane Helene and the devastation it has caused, but you might not know that Mercury One is on the ground helping residents of Asheville, North Carolina, along with Congressman Corey Mills. Here is part of what Mills is flying in and delivering to the supplies for the victims there affected.
Quick update. We've heard the CASA. We've got more supplies that's coming inbound. We're going to be delivering to Western North Carolina for day 3. This will be about 5 tons of supplies total. Everything from water to diapers to food to non-perishables. We're also bringing in 2 very qualified combat medical DJs who will help with bringing in any of the medical supplies necessary, like we did yesterday with insulin, but also help with medevac and voice operations. So again, trying to get and fill the gap the federal government's going to continue to fall short. As soon as we get on the ground, it's a heavy fog right now, so we're trying to delay any type of kilo operation. But we'll keep you updated as we get in there.
He said 5 tons of supplies. That's just today, right? They've been out there doing this all week. Corey Mills alongside Mercury One, helping them out and delivering the food, the supplies, because as Corey said, the government isn't there, Matthew.
Yeah, this is why we felt it was so important to go there. And this is one of those situations in which, tragic situation, but good for us in the sense that we can cover it for you and help people at the same time. So, Glenn Beck's own Mercury One charity is flying out there. They brought Corey Mills out there. Julio Rosas is there now. He's out there shooting this stuff and also writing stories for us. And a few other people will be out there soon as well. So we're sending people there and we're covering the story. And it's important we do so because, as you know, the legacy media has not covered this like they should. And I'm hearing today Steve Baker is probably going to be there next week. He's from North Carolina. He's helping with a staging area. People like that are telling me that FEMA still is not there. Like these people very much need help. And they haven't seen anyone from the government in many places.
No, and if this is Hurricane Sandy and it's New York and New Jersey that's affected, it's all over the news every single day. I want to make sure that it doesn't happen here, that this doesn't just fall by the wayside, that this is still in people's minds and they're still willing to go in and help out wherever they can.
Yeah, it's this happens a lot, by the way, and it's not just political bias, it is regional bias of where media is located. And these people act in these cities as if the rest of America just doesn't exist. And that's the great thing about being in Dallas. We're not on the coast, at least. So anyway, you look at what the serious point here is that we have hundreds of thousands of miles of people who have been affected in multiple states, not just Western North Carolina, but around it as well. Georgia, I mean, you got people talking about Augusta still. And their stories need to be told. We don't even know their stories, and we're still finding bodies. So this is a moment to help, and it's also a moment for us to shine a light for everybody else on what's going on to help these people, and hopefully raise awareness, because mainstream media, quote unquote, legacy media is not doing its job.
Yeah, and our national correspondent Julio Rosas is out there, and he's capturing a ton of video for us, getting a ton of interviews. And let's listen to an emergency worker talking about the hurricane.
2 inches of water in here, and in 2 minutes it was to my knees. And I looked outside and it was chest deep, and then I went upstairs, and in a minute the doors buckled and the water came through. This pickup was sitting right there near the tables, and it pushed it all the way halfway down the building. The truck down there with the open bays, it was in here. It's supposed that's about a $300,000 cash unit. It was unbelievable. I've been here my whole life. I've never seen anything like it. My grandmother talked about the 1916 flood, and from what she told me, this is on the order of that.
Yeah, I listened to that and I hear him say, okay, there was 2 inches of rain. And then I go back and it was up to my waist, right? This came on so quickly. And so if people are saying, oh, well, they should have been out there preparing, they should have been doing more. Well, a lot of these people didn't think this severity, this level of damage was going to happen in their area.
Yeah, I mean, I think as Biden claims, I think he's not wrong. FEMA did something. They sent some people to some of these regions, but no one was expecting anything like this. The fact that they had so much rain beforehand and then all of a sudden this dumped on them, I mean, this was unexpected. And you know, this is more than a 100-year event, right? 1916 flood maybe was as bad, and that was over 100 years ago. So this is one of those things that just comes out of nowhere and happens, and you have to respond to it. And what's really disturbing is we still have whole counties, right, without water, where there's the water plant's gone. I mean, and that's not going to come back until God knows how long, but months at least. And then you also have situations in which power has gone out as well, and the way in which it's set up as basic infrastructure will have to be repaired, and that's going to take a long time.
Mercury One's executive director, JP Decker, joined the show on Monday, and he was talking about the point that FEMA is still not there.
It is the everyday person who's upset and frustrated that our government's not doing anything. And again, we don't have to have our government do everything. But this is one of those moments where we should step up and help our fellow Americans instead of people outside of this world that we just gave a few billion to in Ukraine. And so yet again, our government is failing the everyday American who just needs help.
Couldn't agree more. It's still going on. That was from Monday. It still holds true today. I have an updated list of what Mercury One has done on the ground. They are transporting oxygen bottles and insulin and Starlinks to a hospital in North Carolina, along with Corey Mills. They've been rescuing families that are trapped in North Carolina. Many of them have been without food and water or medical attention since the storm started. They have partnered with numerous other organizations and churches to bring warm meals and gift cards because fuel is a problem. Just finding food right now is a problem. There's an entire, 2 other paragraphs of the things that Mercury One has done. But you see the money that has been raised is already in action in North Carolina right now.
Oh yeah, as JP Decker said, they're turning around, they're getting out there. What people need to realize right now, and this is hard to believe, but you need to realize that if you're sitting comfortably at home, is what JP Decker said and Al Robertson said, right? He told us the other day. I mean, it had been 2.5 days at that point, and he hadn't seen anyone from the federal government. You have people today who are cut off by road still. Helicopters were the only way to get in and out. I just heard from Steve Baker this morning. One of the people who lives in the route, she counted over 70 helicopter trips going back and forth the last few days, every day, over her house. Today, there was 2 or 3.
Wow.
And the problem is they're shutting down. The federal government is trying to shut down individual people getting in and out of these places. And in the meantime, they're still stranded and trapped. So this is a very much an ongoing emergency and situation that people need to realize and pay attention to.
And as long as it's ongoing, we will still be covering it here at Blaze News tonight. When we come back, we'll be giving you a look at Blaze's new exciting project, Frontier Magazine, when we return. Blaze Media is rolling out a new magazine full of original journalism, photography, and essays from around the world. Frontier magazine features big names like Matt Taibbi, Chris Rufo, Glenn Beck, and Mark Levin. So here to discuss is Peter Gietl, managing editor for Return and Frontier, and BlazeTV host James Poulos, who is also featured. So James, let's start with you. Can you just start by telling us what you're going to be doing for Frontier and what your vision is?
Of course. Hey, Jill, it's good to see you again. So, this is a big swing, and it's time for big swings. We share that traditional idea of the frontier as the heartland of the place where, you go to do your own thing, to set your own agenda and to escape all that you found stifling in your life before. We embrace a little bit of that more modern vision, which is the frontier is the undiscovered country. It's the place where you need to sort of hack your way in to leave your mark on the world. But we go beyond that too. Like the frontier that also counts to us is the one that this is deep in the American bones of, a place where you have room to breathe, where you have room for silence, where you have room for God. A lot of what's being marketed to us today as the frontier is a really progressive notion of like, hey, we need a device for every orifice. We need a virtual world that replaces the real world. We need machines that know everything. Really, just putting Americans into this map that seems to understand every nook and corner and every nook and cranny of life. We want to go to a place where there is no map, where our future is not yet written, and where we can regain that kind of agency that has powered so much of what America is all about. So, if you're looking for a magazine that feels good in your hand, that you can open up and you can experience the beauty and the challenges of this country and the people in it, this is the magazine for you. And unanticipated things too. That's what any good frontier will deliver for you, and that's the kind of vibe that we're looking forward to bringing.
So, Peter, how did Frontier go from an idea to a reality?
Well, it was a lot of hard work and pulling our hair out at times. But James and I and, Matt Peterson and other people at the Blaze just really believed that this was the time to roll something out that was beautiful and meaningful and could serve as a cultural touchstone of we can create a magazine just as good as anything on the coast that champions America, champions our way of life, and creates beauty. And, with the photos and the original journalism, it really is, it needs to be something tangible that's on a coffee table that you read, that has that beauty and essence.
So, Matthew, give us the 50,000-foot view and why it's named Frontier. Why did you choose this?
Well, I think it just to add to what James said, frontier meant a line in Europe. Frontier means the border line, and what America did is transform that so that in the old frontier you had a settled area where it was more than 2 people per square mile would live, and then right outside of that, right? So you have the border of America, you have the settled area, and right outside of that was the frontier, which is the meeting place of savagery and civilization. And that is a place, not merely a line. And so the frontier is about a lot more than the old Western frontier. It's the fact that there is a place where we wrestle with reality and savagery and civilization, both within our hearts and in the rest of the country. And this is out from under, to what James was saying, the sort of regulatory state, the oppressive managerialism that is over everyone. No one feels free. They feel like their possibilities are limited, right? You hear them, talking into political debates. The American dream is gone, and the truth is that in how we live and what we eat and how we dress, and how we join together, in how we transact in businesses, how we use technology, and how we relate to the spiritual and to God, we are still free. And there are people throughout the country doing all kinds of interesting things, and Peter and James have brought them to us in this publication.
James, give us a 60-second version of the editor's note. You were talking about the season of testing. Take us through that.
Sure. I mean, it's always the privilege of an editor to kind of say what they want to say before every issue of a magazine. And so, I want to take people on a walk through that kind of season of testing as it plays out in the lives of the Americans around them. We can talk about the American dream being, on death's door or dead or whatever. Maybe you don't want to stake your hopes and dreams on a dream. Maybe that gets a little too crazy to think about. But America is still here, and Americans are still here. Look around. This is a huge country, and it's full of people doing incredible things. And some of those things are inspiring because they're new, but other things are inspiring because they're not new, because this is the human condition. And every generation is presented with these same challenges, no matter who's, selling what kind of visions or what kind of dreams, people have to tough it out. You got to fight through this life, and you got to know how to do it, not just with your hands, not just with whatever machines or implements or tools you've got, but spiritually. And this is one of those times when if you shy away from that, if you look toward people for spiritual authority that they don't have, if you look for, someone from the government to ride in and ride to the rescue and save you, we're seeing this take place literally in real life right out there in Appalachia. You're going to have a tough time. And those of us who understand that there's a duty to rise to that kind of occasion and prove our mettle, we got to band together and we got to make it happen.
Now, people out there are going to say, how do I get involved in this? How do I get one of these Frontier magazines? Well, it's all going to be part of Blaze Unlimited. It's a founding subscription to Frontier by Blaze Media. And you know what? It's not just going to stop there, because you're also going to have access to VIP events. You're going to have exclusive behind the scenes content and members only merchandise. Plus, you guys, it's not just a one-way communication street. There's going to be direct input from you guys on future Blaze Media projects and a limited founding members card. So you get all of this, right? There are different levels. There are different tiers right now available for Blaze TV. So you get all of the benefits of Blaze TV Plus, and you can see all of the extra stuff that we're adding in, because it's not just going to be, like I said, a one-way street. We want you to be a part of this movement and what we're doing, Matthew.
Yeah, so it's very simple. There's only 3 tiers to Blaze right now. It's Blaze News, Blaze TV, plus Blaze News, or Blaze Unlimited. And what Blaze Unlimited is about is that premium tier where you are really involved in what we're doing. And Frontier is really this is the tip of the spear on that, because this is a publication that many people on the right have tried to produce, have tried to make, that's beautiful, that has the sort of art and the sort of writings that aren't. None of it is that way. It's talking about how we live our lives and exploring the frontier around us that still exists in America. So a lot of people have tried, but what James and Peter and the crew here have done is we've made it. It's actually here. And we are just really happy to be able to bring it to you. It's at blazeunlimited.com. And Peter, I want to get the last word from you. What was your favorite part about this entire project?
Interacting with a lot of amazing artists and photographers. I really enjoyed going out to Seattle. I spent some time with Chris Rufo on the ground and getting to interview him and write about what he's up to. It's kind of the core of what Matt is saying is this is about building to something. This isn't about lamenting the past. It's a positive vision for the future. You were also in El Salvador for a week. You didn't even mention that. That was quite the adventure.
Don't overlook the trip to El Salvador for the Frontier magazine. Gentlemen,
we love Chris. We love Chris.
We do.
But you were in El Salvador for a week. Amazing.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. And I know how much work you guys have put in behind the scenes. So it is so exciting to be able to bring this to everybody. And make sure that you go check out blazeunlimited.com. That's going to do it for us here on Blaze News Tonight. We'll see you back here on Friday.